Hey, hello everyone. This is not SaaS Unbound. This is a live AMA with Alex Delivet, and we're super excited to see you here. I've been wanting to do that for a while, and finally we're all here. So Alex, well, everyone knows Alex. Everyone I ask, they're like, oh, Alex, yeah, we just had a coffee,
Really?
or like we
No.
just had an episode. Yeah. I was talking to Moritz Dossinger, and he was like, oh yeah, you know Alex, you're doing an AMA with him. I'm going for coffee with him. And I'm like, oh, okay. So anyway, Alex is the founder at Collect and host of SaaS Connection. You've been in SaaS industry for a while. You know it all, what's happening in France, what everyone's doing. So maybe we can dig into your background first before we start the whole gossiping about what we've
Okay.
learned on the episodes.
Okay. So I'm 40-year-old, so feeling very old right now, and I have a business background. I've been, in the well, I've started my career not in the tech industry. I've always been passionate about tech, but right after school, I decided to go, I would say, in a real job, in two brackets. So I've decided to work in the pharmaceutical industry for 5 or 6 years, and then at some I got very good position at this time, and at some point I decided to go back to my first love, which is tech. And so in 2011, I think, so 12 years ago, um, I've started my first startup. It was called TripXP, and it was a marketplace for activities. So basically, what Airbnb does right now with activities, but way before they do. And it was a total failure, to be honest. It was the time
Oh
where
no.
there were like lots of sharing economy and all these kind of startups, and um, it was interesting, but business wise, I don't remember the figures, but it was like nothing. And but what at this time I also had a blog, and then I was doing lots of I was reading a lot in the US, and watching what was happening in the US. And at this time, 500 startups, they were organizing an event called Unsexy, and it was about all this industry, not very sexy but bringing money, and basically it was about SaaS. And I was like, so
Okay.
I wrote a blog post saying, hey, it doesn't look sexy, but we could do the same in France. There are lots of SaaS editors, SaaS vendors, and could be interesting to make a conference about them. And so I started a conference called B2B Rocks in 2013, and right after it was like, so first event in 2013. I think I had like 300 people at Microsoft. And so since then, like I was dedicated to SaaS and B2B startups, to make it
Okay.
short.
All right. So you decided to make unsexy the new sexy.
Yeah, exactly.
um, right. And, it worked. Now founders are considered a very desirable kind of path. So, maybe there is your
Yeah,
fault too.
I'm part of it, but of course, I would say there are lots of SaaS everywhere. I think at this time there were maybe, I don't know, maybe 1,000 SaaS globally, and now there are like, I don't know how much, but maybe 20,000, maybe 40,000. I don't have a clue, but the market is so
Yeah.
big, and everything changed so much. In 10 years, when you were talking about startups 10 years ago, nobody knew what a startup was. Now people are very specific, And I think the good thing with SaaS is it's not a trend. Actually, and there will still be SaaS in 10 years or 20 years. And so I'm very bullish on this.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm glad to hear your story, because I saw some podcasts, some of your previous interviews, but it's also very good to just hear it from you personally. But how did you get into podcasting? And first things first, who's your favorite guest?
Oh, so how did I get
Spill the
into
beans.
podcasting? Yeah, I think the thing is, B2B Rock still exists, and I decided to sell it more than 5 years ago. The thing is, organizing an event was too big for one person, and during all the organization phase, I couldn't focus on my business anymore. So I've decided to sell it, but I would say a few years later, so maybe 2020, 2021, I was really feeling the lack of contact with other founders. And I was like, well, and yeah, it was, I wanted to nearly to start a new event again. And I was like, okay, podcasting seems to be a good way to get in touch with lots of founders, learning from them, doing what I love to do, but without the constraints of organizing an event, selling tickets, booking a venue, and so on. And so and also I knew some podcaster and friends, um, and well, important to be mentioned, but there were no major podcast dedicated to SaaS in French. So that was also a reason to launch one. And actually, I think today we are two podcasts on the same topic in French. The other one is very nice too. It's called SaaS Club. If Eric is hearing this, ask me anything. Hey Eric, and so yeah, we launched nearly at the same time, and it's great. We have nearly the same positioning, nearly the same way to do the episode. But yeah, I think the market is big enough to to have several players on this. And concerning my favorite guest, that's a good question. I think, well, I've got the list of all the episodes just in front of me, so I will
Okay. Are
try
you
to.
scrolling?
Yeah, yeah.
I
Um,
think what everybody really wants to know is who's your least favorite guest, because everyone wants the
oh,
gossip.
least
But
favorite.
no. I asked about the favorite
Least.
one,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
it's just so like
yeah.
always so like uneasy to talk about most favorite, least favorite, because you don't
Yeah.
want to have a favorite at all.
No, no. I can. Well, I think the episode was really interesting with Maxime Renault. He had a company called Montbanquet, and now is chief strategy and expansion officer at Hublot. And he is a very nice guy, very very smart, and I really enjoyed our conversation together. So if I had to recall one, I would, or to recommend one, I would suggest this one.
Okay. All right. That's good. So, do you remember maybe how it all started for you, like the first steps into podcasting? Obviously, you've had a network already from all the events, so people knew who you are. But was it any difficult to get people on the podcast? Like, what would you recommend if people are just starting? Where to
Yeah,
look
yeah.
for guests?
That's a good question. I remember the beginning, and it's not a gossip, but kind of. So I'm friend with other podcaster, um, and I've been in touch with them saying, "Hey, we could launch a podcast dedicated to SaaS." And they told me, okay, that could be nice, but also we are discussing with Microsoft to launch such a podcast. So maybe we can suggest you to be the host of this podcast. So I was like, okay, let's do that. So they went in a meeting with Microsoft, suggested my name, and finally Microsoft told them, okay, we will sign with you to create this podcast, but we want to have someone working at Microsoft to present it. And then, so I would say, created my own competitor, and by doing that, and so very quickly I was like, okay, if I don't want to to lose momentum concerning the launch of my podcast, I need to act very fast and launch my own. And so I've decided to launch mine. I ordered some gears, and so yeah, I spent maybe $500 to get microphone and recorder and so on. And since then, I was like, okay, now I've done this expense, I can't go back. And so I took my email account and sent maybe 5 or 10 emails saying, hey, do you want to be my first guest? And then, yeah, it was easy for me. But very
Okay.
quickly, it became more, I would say, more difficult, because then you need to reach people that you have never heard. It's a game. How is it for
It's
you?
true, absolutely. I mean, for me, this is like SaaS Unbound is not my first podcast, right? The first one was Mars Talks for the previous company I worked for, and it was like a total experiment because we were a very small startup, zero marketing dollars. We didn't want to invest, so we just wanted to like go with building in public, building a community, showcasing people, showcasing that we care, showcasing our product. So I thought, okay, so like what's getting everybody's attention and what's helping people to get out there? You kind of just like write about these people. You kind of just write interviews. I mean, it could be fun, right? And it works sometimes, but I thought, okay, it's going to be like so time consuming. And I just want to reach out, and like a real conversation is worth a ton of written interviews. And yeah, and somehow I reached out to just people that I met, I don't know, a few months before that. They were all like in a startup community, right? I didn't have any hopes that someone will say yes. At first, I kind of like reached out, like, hey, there is an idea, maybe yes, or like maybe no. But you said, you invested in gear. No, nothing like that happened for me. Like I had my headphones, my computer, and that was it. And like we didn't really care about like the quality, or the fact that maybe the background is not so nice, but it worked. So it opened a lot of doors, got us a lot of partnerships, and once you get that like first kind of like a star guest, then you kind of show it to everybody. Like this guy was on
Yeah.
the podcast, and everyone's like, okay, since that guy was on the podcast, then maybe we should consider it. And then from there, it kind of gets easier. But I also agree with you that at some point it gets tricky, because one, yeah, you reach out to people you've never seen before. You have to research about them, and the people that sometimes are very active on social media. And I've had a few episodes like that when you feel like it's going to be great because the person is a rock star of LinkedIn. But then it's great that you do your research because you kind of have to. They're good at writing, they're good at presenting their ideas on social media. They do not usually go to podcasts. So doing the initial research, oh my god, it's helped so many episodes to go right.
Mm.
So that's also a challenge. And another is just like for me, the biggest challenge of podcast. And yeah, granted, it's all SaaS, right? So some say how difficult or how different can it be? But at the same time, it's SaaS for like different niches. And every time you do a podcast, you have to go and at least learn something about that niche. So, like, for example, I remember when DHH said he's going to be on the podcast, I was thrilled, but at the same time, I sat down and it was like, damn, I know like nothing about like Ruby on Rails or like super technical stuff that this guy's talking about. That was like
Mm.
rocket science for me. So uh, learning about that, I think I spent like a week solely like on that episode. But then there was an episode with David Nelson who's doing a startup, like again, very deeply technical AI powered stuff for real estate, real time data for real estate managers. And again, you're like, what? What does that do? Like, how does that work? And like, you don't want to appear like you know nothing about this stuff. Sure, you want like good questions, you want to respond to the answers, and that's a challenge. So sorry, I spilled it
That's
all.
true.
um,
No, no, no worries.
but yeah, how is it for you? Like, how do you deal with the fact that, and obviously like you've got years on my experience,
Yeah,
but how do you deal with this like learning?
actually, well, the podcast is really a side project for me. So I have a big constraint about my productivity and the way I would say it fits in my calendar. So the thing, well, first I try to, well, to record nearly all the episode in person in my office. Well, I'm living in Paris, and I would say most of my guests they are at some point in Paris. So I try to do the episode in person. It's not the same way to, well, it's not the same eye contact, it's not the same feeling. So this is something I try to do. So, and I don't, well, but it's an habit, and it was the same with the event that I used to do. I don't have time to prepare all the interviews, script them, do lots of research. So I try to, well, to have the guest maybe 15 minutes before the recording in the office. We just have like a coffee just to break the ice. I try to find, I would say, an angle to, well, or a main topic, and then it's just a discussion basically. And because, as you mentioned, yeah, I've been in this industry for now quite a long time. So I have in mind all the kind of topics that we can address together. Um, Sometimes it's a little bit biased because, let's say that I'm working on security issue on my own product, or well, I've been working on this for maybe a week or two, or concerning, I don't know, maybe ISO compliance, or, well, this kind of stuff.
Yeah,
And in front of me, there is
no, I
someone
do.
would dealt with that. So for sure, I will ask them question. Okay, how did you make this? So because I need to have answers concerning this topic right now. So yeah, I would say most of the time the interview they go this way. The downside of doing this is sometimes the kind of question that I'm asking could be the same. So um, I would say I need to be careful with that, not always asking the same question, the same topics, and trying to find different things. Yeah, but it's not really prepared or script. It's like more freestyle.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, if a guest is requesting, like, send me at least some question that could pop up, absolutely, sure. But again, I like when it's just a reactive conversation when you can be like, oh, you just said that, and there are
Yeah.
news about your company, so like, let's tie it together, let's discuss it. So yeah, it's a lot of fun when it's yeah.
What is complicated, um, and it happened to me, I would say maybe 3 or 4 times. And it could answer to your previous question, what is your worst guest? Is people like that are not really in the discussion. You're asking a question and they just say yes, and then you're like, oh shit, I need to find another question. And so it's very hard, uh, as a host, to to find new questions, and it doesn't look like, um, an integratory, asking so many questions like in the, police station. So
Yeah.
I want to have
Yeah.
like a real conversation that you can have with someone. And sometimes it's very surprising because people feel, looks very natural, and very well, they can speak very easily in front of you, and then you just tell them, okay, I hit record, and then they're just changing. You're like, okay, don't stress,
Yeah,
it's
true.
cool. It's very hard.
Camera freaks a lot of people out. Yes.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
it's
one
very,
thing that I
very
noticed,
surprising.
uh, I thought, and this is just because I've been doing it for a year, right? And the stress is kind of gone. I mean, when I go to a podcast with a person who's building a company that I'm very vaguely kind of like understanding what's going on, like what is this niche, and like you said just now, security compliance. I had an episode with the founder of a security compliance company, and that was very difficult. It was a very nice episode, and I was a bit nervous, obviously, because I knew very little about the topic. But overall, it's a lot easier for me now. So I just go in and talk like we're all people. I'm very interested in what you're doing. But the most common question from any founder out there, no matter how confident or successful they are, it's how did I do? And I'm like, awesome, you did great. It
Mm.
was a great conversation, lots of insights, very interesting for me, for the founders that would be listening to this. But it's just so interesting to know that people, yeah, when you hit record, people want to know how they did, how it looked like, how were the answers. So yeah, I think one of the like main jobs of a host is probably to like put people at ease. I'm
Yeah.
not asking you for your MRR, no numbers, no why you fired that guy last week, just what you're doing, why you're doing it.
Yeah, you're right. It's very important not to. Well, sometimes there were like people sending me messages after the publication of an episode, as saying, "Hey, why didn't you ask for the revenue of this company?" And I was like, because I know that they don't want to communicate on that. So if I do, they will just say, "Oh, I'm sorry, we don't communicate on these kind of figures." So just creating, frustration on both sides. So yeah, I'm not. So sometimes I'm, during this coffee before the recording, I'm like asking question, okay, do you want to share numbers? Are you open to talk about that? And if they say no, I respect, and I'm not trying to get this kind of of information for people. Well, we're not in the gossip industry. We are just trying to get, I would say, relevant information for people. But
That's true.
sometimes what I like to do, um, I would say, without getting some confidential information, it's just to give some context to the listener. because I think it's important to know, for example, if you are interviewing a founder of a SaaS, you just know that they are selling to enterprise, but you don't know if it's 10K RPU or maybe 1 million RPU. So I think it's important to sometimes just to give a little bit of context about, okay, what's the kind of deal that you can have with your customers? How many customers? Well, what the average? Do you have 100? Do you have 10,000? It's not the same. So I think it's important just to get some, some figures.
Yeah, absolutely. When it makes sense. And also agree, it's super important. This is the first thing that I ask before we go in. Is there anything you don't want to talk about? And, your episodes are not live, mine aren't as well. And again, this is something I repeat over and over again. If something's not comfortable for you, please stop me. I will edit it out, no questions asked. It will not never go back there, because yeah, like once you hit that, oh, I want to know, then people are just going to clam up and they will never tell you anything from that point. So like
Exactly.
once you set the you pave the road, like it's going to be smooth. It's your rules and I'm just asking questions. Yeah, it's easier.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. So we talked a little bit about podcasting. I think that was super interesting, like how you do it, and like to see if there are similarities, because you've been in this industry for a while, a lot longer than I was. But yeah, we also promised to talk about SaaS and like what do we think is happening in the SaaS industry, what people are talking about, what they're lacking. Now is a good time to sell the company, or it's a good time to get VC rounds. So what's the biggest issue you hear from the founders when you talk to them?
That's a good question. Well, first, I would say, but I think it's nearly the same with yours. Is I would say it's cold information or cold discussion, not trying to get on hot topics and comment like news. So I don't. Well, I do have some polls on the market, but not that much as if we were commenting, news. What I can see is, of course, but I would say it's not only for SaaS business. It's, I would say, more global. There are lots of SaaS right now that are, I wouldn't say struggling to raise fund, but they know that it's not the right timing to do that. So I would say most of them, if they needed, say, reduce the number of employee maybe already nearly a year ago. So and trying to go back to profitability. The good thing with SaaS globally is it's more, well, the revenue is more predictable than with all kind of startups, and most of them they can go back to profitability quite easily. Well, at least they can well, they I would say most of them they already have a good revenue line. I've been interviewing actually one of your company. So it was interesting to see, I would say, the full process. I also interview other company, and what is interesting by doing this kind of podcast is you can also interview some people that are buying companies. So, for example, it was a case with Remy from ABTST. So they are trying to acquire multiple companies and have a build up. So it's really interesting to see that right now. I think another trend is what is doable with AI for SaaS. It's big change. Most of us are just wondering, okay, is it for others, only for I would say, pure players in the AI industry, or can we try to to embed AI in our product? So I think it's quite a new topic, an hot topic, and I would say globally we can see that it's more difficult to do business for now quite a long time, not quite a long time, but maybe 1 year. Um, so yeah, people are just reacting about that, trying to find new solution to sell, trying to find new, well, I would say a new way to live longer.
Right, that's true. Like a lot of founders are talking about like the survival mode that they entered like this year, earlier this year or last year, and some of them is super happy that they haven't raised money during the pandemic, and yeah, AI is a great topic. Like everyone's talking about AI. Someone says, it's an evil that you shouldn't try just yet. See where it goes. See what everyone else does with it. Don't touch it before like how people react. Really,
Mm,
after that craze is gone. I think this is kind of like a cautious approach to AI. I think is very smart. And also one other thing that I've heard from a few founders was about the fact that for a lot of founders, there's like a bubble where they exist, and that is it. And just yesterday, I had a podcast with Marvin Felder, a Swiss founder that has been to a couple of our events, SaaS Group. And he was like, well, in Switzerland, there are not many SaaS founders. So you really live in a bubble. And like getting out there and like learning from real founders is such a value. So I think also this is something that a lot of founders are struggling with because everyone's talking about like how valuable it is to talk to the others. It's no longer about competition. It's no longer about just getting ahead of everyone else. It's let's share like what helps you, what I can use without really like over trying to overtake you or steal your customers.
mm. Definitely,
Yeah.
I think. Well, of course, we all have competition, but um, I don't remember who said that. I'm hesitating, but I think it was Paul Graham, so the founder of YC, and he said nobody is dying from competition. You can die um, from lack of product market fit. You can lack of everything, but there are very few chances that you will die from competition, and so you can share pretty much everything, or even if you want to have like a secret sauce, you can keep it for you, but share the rest of the process. And so, well, you can share so much. So I think it's really valuable to share a lot of things. um and yeah, and I'm not a pro build in public person. I wouldn't share everything because I see some downside of sharing everything. But I would say you can, yeah, you can share quite a lot without frightening anything. So yeah, for SaaS founder, I think it's very valuable to help each other and to try to, yeah, to help and get helped.
That's for sure. Yeah, absolutely. And since we started talking about AI, I want to come back to podcasting a little bit. Do you use AI for anything in your production cycle?
I started to. Actually, I've changed my production cycle. I would say a few weeks ago, maybe 3 weeks ago, because I was only doing audio, and and I start seeing my audience like plateauing, and I was like, okay, now I need to. But well, even if I'm like, there is no competition in this podcast industry. There is. It's not only, I would say, direct competition. Talking about podcast, talking about SaaS, it's more the attention economy. You know, your listener, my listener, they only have maybe 5 to 10 hours every week to listen to podcasts. So if they listen to yours, they probably won't have time to listen to mine. So you need to promote like a lot. And so I've decided to include video in my setup, to start recording all my podcast, and not to publish them as an whole, but to just to make some shorts for the promotion. And so I'm still trying to figure out the best way to do that without spending 5 hours per episode. And I'm using AI for this. The first step is I'm using AI for the transcription, so from audio to text. So this way I can identify if there are some editing to be done. Also, if there are some, I would say, parts that could be highlight and that could become short. And then the second part, so for the video editing, I'm doing it, I would say, the old school way, using Adobe Premiere. And but because also I would say I'm going quite fast with this. I try to use Descript, but the files are so big,
Yeah.
because I have like 2 times 1 hour, so 2 cameras, 1 hour, and so it's 2 times 20 gigabytes. And so and when you put that into Descript, like it goes wrong. And so I prefer to do that very quickly on Premiere. And then when I have this short, so without any subtitle, I'm using a new SaaS called Submagic, and it helps me to do some subscription very easily, including emojis, and like it's done in 5 minutes.
Okay. All right. I wrote it down. So I'll
I
give it
can
a
send you
try. Thank you.
the
I
link.
do use
Yeah.
cool,
What do
thank
you
you. I
use?
do use Descript. I have just one, I would show it to you, but it's filming me. I have like this teeny tiny Insta360 camera. And I think like the heaviest episode I've ever had was like 1 gigabyte.
Mm.
So it's not too heavy, right? And it doesn't really freak Descript out. And I mean, Descript is great, but a lot of things freak it out lately. But still, it's my go-to tool, very easy to use, especially, once you actually get there and spend an hour on like learning how to use it properly. Because at first, like when I first got there, I was like, okay, cool. I cannot like focus on the video. I can focus on the transcript and do everything there. But then it's not as straightforward if you really want to do it well.
Mm.
All right. So I invested some time there. So yeah, now it's like shorts and the subtitles, everything's there. But actually, I used Riverside. We're on Riverside now, streaming to LinkedIn. So I use Riverside first because it gives you an opportunity to just like do a short right there. So there is Riverside, then Descript, then for transcribing, I actually discovered Podium.page, and I'm absolutely ecstatic. I had an episode with the founder last week.
Okay.
Super cool. I mean, what they're doing is like is magic. Like really, if you think ChatGPT is magic, then go use podium.page because these guys are absolutely amazing. And I used to do it all manually and spend an hour just crawling through this episode and trying to figure out like what is the quote that I want to use, what are the like time frames, and now it's just put it on Podium, boom. You got your show notes, your quotes, your Twitter, and obviously like you go there and you edit everything and you put the brand voice or like your personal voice there, right? So you add the personality to this, but still awesome tool. Absolutely recommend it. I'll send you a
And
link.
I need to test it.
And yeah, it's great. And also, what else? I mean, then, there are covers, and Figma helps with that a lot. And then I use RSS, good old, nothing else, for putting it out there everywhere. Absolutely. And because we do have YouTube and we do have video, it's all the time on YouTube. It's with shorts and everything. So yeah, super
Yeah,
fun. A lot of time, very time consuming, but but podcasting is fun.
yeah.
Everyone, you should try it.
I'm trying to also to use Notion for because I think once you have this transcript, you can, I would say, basically you use it with ChatGPT or Notion or anything, um, just to have maybe an headline, maybe to have like a LinkedIn post, and even if it's not perfect, sometimes, I'm not, I would say, a content writer, so it requires me lots of effort to do this promotion. And so by using these tools, um, I still need to, I would say, to give my own tone of voice and to change things. But yeah, it's a game changer. Maybe from 15 minutes to 3 minutes to do the same job.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And what has been your biggest growth channel?
I would say, it's a good question. I think it's word of mouth, and also no, but is it word of mouth? I don't know, but I would say by inviting lots of people on the podcast, but it's the same for you. Then all your guests they are promoting your, at some point they will promote your podcast, and so I think it helps a lot. And then if people like it, they will just subscribe, and then it just compound. So I would say it's this channel. Basically, I didn't. For maybe right now I have maybe 90 episodes, maybe a little bit more. I don't remember. Um, but I would say for half of them, I did not made any promotion. So it's only word of mouth and this kind of thing. But for most of them, I didn't even made a LinkedIn post announcing the episode.
Okay, that's impressive. So yeah, like
I'm not sure if
probably
it's impressive.
network
It's
effect.
stupid, but it's I'm not sure if it's impressive.
Yeah, but your network works for you, so you're getting new and very cool
Yeah,
guests.
but I,
So
I should
yeah,
I
it
should
works.
leverage it because um, there are some tricks that I'm not using. I know that, and maybe you do that too. But there are lots of people they have like an email template, and they send it to their guest like every time they are publishing a new episode, saying, "Hey, was nice to record an episode with you. Here is a link to the episode. Would be nice if you can promote it on your socials and so on." I don't do that,
Yeah.
and it's not very long, and it could be like just all these marketing tips that are just because marketing is just about this kind of thing. In fact, it's just about all the
True.
small things that you do to promote your product or your podcast. So I need to improve
Yeah.
this. How do you do?
Okay, yeah, maybe. I do send a link. So I do the post and then I send it on LinkedIn because LinkedIn is like my go-to tool. Um, Pretty much all the connections go through LinkedIn. Then I just send a message saying, here are all the links. Here is the post. If you want to use this post, or better yet, create your own, because LinkedIn likes original stuff, not really when you repost something. So yeah, I definitely do that. What else do I do? I mean, obviously, like, it's not just like posting a link saying go there, listen to it. Again, because LinkedIn doesn't really like links in the post. It's usually a short with a promotion, like with one question, or like with a couple of sentences, just talking about something important, and then a post, and then in the comments I'll use all the
Yeah.
links, and that's been getting a lot more attention.
And also one thing quite difficult for me, and I don't know if you have this problem or not, is, well, so I'm not an English native, but so and my podcast is in French, and I considered LinkedIn and Twitter, as I would say, well, not consider, but I try to expand my network, I would say, globally on these two social networks. So not only with French people, but with international people, because for my business, which is my main focus, I'm trying to get attention in the US, in Canada, globally. And this is quite difficult in fact to manage, I would say, different languages on LinkedIn or on Twitter, because if I want to promote SaaS Connection, I will do it in French, but then I would say my non French speaking audience, they will get bored very quickly, and they will probably unfollow me or block me or anything. So it's quite difficult, to use, well, your socials in different language when you need to promote one time SaaS Connection, the other time Collect. So that's a real challenge for me.
Oh yeah, true, true. I like sometimes, and especially for me, right? The first podcast was uh, like about the founders and for the founders, but still from the company, right? Representing like what we wanted to achieve. And now as well, saas.unbound is from SaaS Group, right? So usually, like what I see is, you're absolutely right. It's whether a podcast promoting a company, podcast promoting a product. So in your case, it's a bit of a different story. So you are promoting your product, but you're like niching your advertisement down to just a few countries.
Yeah.
Okay.
And actually,
All right. That can be
the
challenging.
the podcast is not really, well, related to Collect, because so maybe for the audience and for the context, so Collect is a customer onboarding platform, but it can be used by SaaS, but it's not the main use case. There are a lot of use cases with fintech, real estate companies, well, all these kind of companies, but not anything related with SaaS. So I've not started SaaS Connection, I would say, as a channel for Collect. It was really a side project. So it's not even linked, So it's not really marketing. Well, yes, marketing channel.
You're shooting yourself in the
Yeah,
foot. Okay. Well, it's still, I think if you're out there, whatever outlet you're using, you're still promoting your own brand,
yeah,
right? You're Alex the founder of Collect, and you're Alex, the host of SaaS Connection. So it's all intertwined, I think, and still could help. But yeah, it is a bit challenging if you're targeting broader markets.
Exactly.
All right, maybe you should try an English podcast, just like a feature
Yeah,
episode.
maybe one day I will do that.
Okay, all right. Well, that was my idea, so I should be the guest.
We can do that.
Well, Alex, it's awesome talking with you. I think if any of the hosts, producers has listened to this, it was very insightful, and I enjoyed listening to what you're doing and how you're doing it. Like, thank you for the suggestion of this magical tool. I definitely will try and use it
I will try yours too.
as well. As well, if you're a host, you're usually on your own. It's you in your bubble with all your founders, just asking good questions. But that said, we do have, and Alex is a proud member of our teeny tiny Slack channel for podcast hosts, producers, managers. So if you're one, I'm going to post a link here. We're talking there about the way we do our podcast, the way saas.unbound is done, the tools that we're using, and we're going to do more. So if you want to join, Alex and me are already there.
Great.
Yeah, thank you so much, Alex. It was
Was a pleasure.
amazing talking with you, and I hope we could do it again sometime.
Thank you, Anna. Have a good day.
Thank you,
Thank you all.
Alex.
Bye.
Take care.